What's going on YouTube? Corey Walker here. I'm a software engineer at IBM and have been doing software development since about 2007. Today we'll be going over how to create an Angular 9 application using the Angular CLI. We'll also add a new custom component and also a new custom service to the application just to see how to wire those up and how that all fits in together. Whether you're new to development or you've been doing development for a while and just looking for a new technology, whether to advance your career or maybe new career opportunities. Maybe you just like tinkering with new technologies. Whatever your reason is, Angular is a very popular framework and is maintained by the teams at Google. So it does have a good base as far as support and also continuing development on the project. It's a very robust framework and can pretty much handle even the most strenuous applications and demanding applications. So it's a very good framework as far as creating good user interfaces and front ends for web applications. If you do find this content helpful, please hit the like button below. That will help YouTube to determine to others that this can help them as well. So, and if you could, please subscribe to my channel. That would help me quite a bit. If you would like to see other tutorials from this, please either comment in the comment section below what kind of tutorial you might want to see as far as software development or cybersecurity, analytics, search engine optimization, anything like that. Please leave in the comment sections and I'll try to go through those and see what all is the most requested. So now that we've done that, let's get started. Hey, what's up guys? So to create a new Angular 9 app, we have a couple of prerequisites we need to do. First is have a Node.js and npm installed. We go to nodejs.org/language prefix and then download. You can download your platform's binary file here to install both Node.js and npm. That will include both of those. So get that right first. Make sure you have the latest version that you possibly can get. I usually try to stick with the long-term service versions. That way, they're just the most stable. But I mean, you can use whichever one you want. And then after you get that installed, we want to install Angular CLI. So we're going to go to angular.io/CLI, and then to install Angular CLI, we use the npm install -g for global, and then @angular/CLI. So we go over here, install Angular CLI. And installing it globally lets you have access to all the commands from the CLI, and no matter where you're at on your system. You can do it only in certain projects or directories, but for the CLI, I usually try to do it globally. That way you can just create projects anywhere on your system that you want. So now we've done that, the next thing we want to do to create each project is to call ng new and then the name of your project. So let's go over here and do that. Ng new test project. And if you're trying to use a web app, usually you'll want Angular routing, so you can hit yes for that. And then you can pick whichever style sheet language you want to use, regular CSS or different kind of framework that compiles the CSS, whichever one you are most comfortable with or you want to use. I usually use SCSS. We'll wait for that to install. All right, so our project is created, and there are some, it's basic template project, but you can customize your project whenever you first create it by passing in some of these options. There's different ones, like if you want to do it in a different directory, or if you want to have some inline styles instead of having different files for the style sheet and the template. You can also or I'm sorry, for the component, the inline style means that your styles will be created in the component TS file. And then for inline templates, it's kind of the same thing. In a component, you have the little header that we'll get to here in a second. You can actually declare the template inside the component TypeScript file. This is always defaults to actually creating separate files for the template, which is what I suggest, just to try to keep the layout and template separate from the logic of the TypeScript file, the component file. You can also add, customize the prefix that you want to use for all of your components and everything. You can specify a prefix. Currently, the default is just app. So, like whenever you create your component, it's just app-root as the default. But you can change that if you want. You can do routing, true or false, whichever one you want. But of course, it now prompts you to answer that question now. And then of course your styles, it prompts you to specify which style sheet you want. But there's different options here, and I'll put a link to this down in the description so that you can have easy access to whatever parameters you can pass. All right, so next up, we'll look at the test project and the WebStorm. Okay, so we'll go ahead and open that up. I'll kind of go over kind of the structure of a new Angular 9 application that it generates by default. Okay, so as you see here, we have an E2E directory. Of course, a node modules directory where all the packages are installed to. The source directory, and then some files in the root directory. The E2E directory is where our configuration file and our source files for end-to-end tests are kept, and it generates a couple of templated files by default. And you can, of course, you're encouraged to try to use those end-to-end tests as much as possible. Under the source directory, you have the app directory, assets, and environments. The app directory is where most of our actual app logic will be kept. The assets is where all of our images, JavaScript, CSS, those kind of things are kept if you're using some kind of external libraries and stuff like that. Or if you just write your own like JavaScript files for the client, you should keep them under here. Environments, just kind of different values that you might need for the different environments, such as base URLs would be different. Different possible like Facebook app IDs and stuff like that. You can put in here and reference those, and create a prod one. You can create a staging one, a dev one, however you want to create multiple ones of these, and then we can reference those, and it'll switch them out later, which I'll show you how to do that. Index.html. This is our base HTML file that we'll want to use. So if you have a template where it shares a lot of the same look and feel across your website, such as all the headers and the navigation menu and the footers, you can go ahead and kind of create different components for those and then put those in here. There's a different way of doing it. Usually I keep this kind of the same. I just add all of my Google Analytics stuff up in the header and all the different style sheets that I need across all the different components up here in the header in the index.html. And then anything that needs to be done, such as external JavaScript libraries, you can add right below this before the closing body tag. And where all of our styles are kept right here in the styles dot whatever you pick, like CSS or SCSS here. This is the global styles, or as it says right here. You can also import other style files, but as you see up here in the app file, each app component and everything has its own style file. So you can set global styles in the styles.scss, but you can also override those with the app components style sheets. They're a little bit more specific and they override anything that's in the global style saw. Down here we have the Karma configuration, which is the test runner that we'll use to run our unit tests. So this is kind of how you configure that, and you can also configure the Istanbul reporter that reports, on test coverage. And there's a lot of different options you can do for that, such as setting the percentage that you have to have, that you want to have, in order for it to be considered a successful run whenever you run tests. So you would set those in here. One of the biggest things for trying to configure your Angular app for different environments is right here in this angular.json file. So you see under the architect, there's different configurations. Currently there's just production, but you can kind of copy this whole section and make as many different environment configurations you want, such as copy it twice and paste it. You can have a staging one and a dev one, and you can just switch the different values that you want to do for each environment. And then we'll see how you can actually utilize that to build it in different ways. As far as for production, we want to optimize it and try to make it as small as possible, make it run a load as fast as possible. But for development, we want to be able to see and debug it. So we wouldn't want to do that for our development environment. There's multiple ones that have different environments that you can configure, such as serve. See anything that has these configurations, you'd want to match whatever is up here in the build stage. So that's one way you can actually target different environments, and by having the environment config files and other different ways you might want to do it. I've actually done it where I have 3 different index.html files. Like one is index.html, and then another one's index.prod or index.staging, index.dev, and then in here you can also there's an option where you can actually replace different files for each environment. Right here's an example right here under production. It has file replacements, and then we'll replace environment.ts with environment.prod, because that way whenever you're just importing environment.ts in your code, you can just leave it as environment.ts, and then whenever you build it for whatever environment you want to use or you want to build it for, then you can tell it to actually import the correct environment for that particular configuration. Down here we have the TS config on what we want to target, the type of ECMAScript version that we want to target. You can choose whichever one you want, but I think ES6 or ES 2015 is the one that's most widely adopted right now, or the latest one adopted by most of the browsers. So that's what I probably suggest using right now at ES6 or ES 2015. And we also have a TS-lint file, so that way we can keep our code pretty much the same across all of our different files in our project. That way you can kind of enforce your styling preferences for your code across your team, and then whenever they run it against a linter, it'll tell them if they need to fix something and change something to match whatever you want your code to look like. So if we go ahead and open this up right now and start trying to run it, you see that under what this is doing is just opening up a package.json file. This is just something that WebStorm automatically picks up. It notices in our package.json file we have a scripts block, and we have multiple different scripts where we picked up npm start, and then it just runs ngserve, which you can do. You can run ngserve or npm start, and it should do the same thing either way. You see down here it's trying to compile all of our different TypeScript files into JavaScript based on the ECMAScript version that we chose. Alright, so now it's compiled successfully, and our development server is running at localhost :4200. So if we want to open that up, we see our test project that we just created. This is the default kind of template that Angular creates whenever you create a new project. One thing that I really like about, or one plugin for Chrome that I really like is this Augury app. It actually allows you to look at the different component structure and everything of the whole web page. And we could do that by going to the developer tools, clicking the Augury tab, and here you see the different component tree that we have, where the router outlet. When you hover over it, it highlights it up here on the screen as well. And so the more components you get, the better this kind of is definitely helpful to be able to see the layout of all the different components and the hierarchy of all the different components within your web app. All right, so now let's say we want to add a different page and we want to be able to see how to wire up a new component. If we go over here to our terminal, actually it always adds the word component to the end. It's just a thing that Angular does, so you usually don't want to add component in the name of the component. Otherwise, as you just saw, probably it'll be something component. So you'll have component in your name 2 times if you do that. So let's just do new. Now if we go over here, we see under app, we see new, and there's our new component. And then under app.module, we see that it's actually still called new component already. So it's a good thing we want to do there. And then if we say, here's what all of our, this is all that our app does, our new component will do. So if we want to do that, so all we have in our app component.html is this router outlet. And so this allows all the different routing whenever you click on a link and the page changes. This is where the component will actually get inserted into the web application. Whatever you have in your template, say if you go to /contact and you have a contact component, and you have that wired up to, in the app routing, say we have, for whenever you go to /contact and it uses the contact component, well, it would insert that contact component's HTML right there in the router outlet to match the route. So that's how the router outlet works. It's there to kind of be a placeholder for whatever content each page is holding for each component. All right, so if we want to add, or actually if we just want to add a route. All right, so we added a route for our new component that whenever we go to the path test, we'll actually see the new component. So it should automatically recompile. So if we go back to our browser, we shouldn't see anything on the home page because we removed it. But if we go to /test, you see there our new template is. So if we want to go back to the new component.html and go to and add the word component, save it, it'll automatically recompile, and then it should automatically refresh and have our changes there as well. So that's pretty much how you add a new component to our Angular app. Now, if we want to add a new service, services are kind of used to be able to share between all the different components, and they're usually the ones that you want to have doing all the HTTP requests and database kind of requests, and leave all that to stuff like services. So under in our project or in our terminal, now we can do ng generate S for service, and then do test for. All right. So now you see we have a test service. We need to make sure when we create a service, in order to be able to use it, you need to list it in the providers in whichever module that needs it. And you see it imports from the test service there. So now under test service, if we just want to add a function, public. All right, so if we want to add a method to our service, we'll just do a test thing, call like get name. It's going to return a string, and we just say return test user. So now, in order to be able to use that in our component, we will go to our new component .ts. We will need to add a declaration for it, and then we'll have Angular inject it for us, so that way we can use it. And then we'll just make a private method for this one, so that our template can use it. We'll just do private get name string, and we'll just do return this.testservice.getName. So now if we call get name, it'll reach out to the actual test service to get a name. And so in our new component.html, we'll do a greeting, hello, get name. Now we go back to our browser. Oh, yeah, that's right. Whenever you actually have to call, if you're calling something from the template, it actually has to be public. It's one thing I'd forgotten about. So now if we go back over here, we say hello test user, and so our component actually reached out to the service that we created and calls its method get name. So in order to do that, again, we just created ng generate service test, and you can specify path you want to have it at. If you just go by just adding a prefix to test, if you have a hierarchy that you want to add it to, then you'll need to add it to your module under the providers. So now we actually have our test Angular app, and we hooked up a new component, and we also hooked up a new service. So that's pretty much how you get started on building a sample Angular 9 app. And so if you like this channel and you think you would benefit from seeing more of my videos, please make sure to hit the subscribe button. And if you felt this video actually helped you and could help others, please hit the like button, as it would help others be able to see this video. All right, thanks. See you next time.